Welcome home to St. Anne's. We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you.
This Sunday is frequently known as Good Shepherd Sunday, and I hope you noticed why. We read all the lessons that we always think back to our childhood and remember, like Psalm 23, and everyone's like, ooh, I know that one. For once, I actually know that one. And then we have the gospel of the Good Shepherd. So it is a beautiful gospel in the sense that many of us, when we hear this, we immediately go back to, Sunday school when you were in third grade and making little sheep out of cotton balls and all these good fun things. And I'm sure as you've grown, someone at some point has done an entire sermon on how sheep are horrible and they're nasty, and it's not really a compliment to be compared to sheep. Someone has done that. Now, personally, I'm weird. Not that you haven't noticed before. I really like sheep. I think sheep are awesome. But there's only one thing that in that herd group that I like more than sheep, and it's alpacas. Alpacas and llamas are like the Meg of the herding world. I love them. So if you're someone who is offended by being compared to a sheep, embrace an alpaca. So where it says sheep in here, you can be like, oh, I am the alpaca of God's flock. So does it feel a little bit better? Because, I think they're supposed to be slightly smarter. I think they're perhaps cleaner. I don't know, but they're freaking adorable. So embrace the alpaca image if that helps you to feel better. So the story of the Good Shepherd. So the story of the Good Shepherd I think is super, super important because, in my opinion, we get so hung up on Jesus crucified. Now, do not get me wrong. Do not run home and say, Meg thinks it's not a big deal that Jesus got crucified and then was resurrected, because by no means is that what I'm saying. And I like my job, and I would like to keep it. So I think it is important that we have the Christ crucified and resurrected. However, I think we sometimes get so hung up on Christ crucified. Like that is the most important being of Jesus. That Jesus was crucified, sacrificed his life, and here we all are because that happened. But the story of the Good Shepherd is not dying for the sheep. The purpose of the shepherd is to love, care for, nurture the sheep. And it is possible that the shepherd may sacrifice for the sheep. That is possible. Now, that's a hard image for us to fully grasp, so I'm going to do a quick 30-second tutorial on shepherding at the time of Jesus, because it's a little bit different than now, where you herd them with a four-wheeler. So at that time, you had some sheep, but everyone has kind of this common group of sheep. So, you got your sheep, and there's everybody else's sheep, and you wander around with your sheep. And at night, there will be a little common corral, and it's just a pile of rocks, really, if we're being real here. And it's three-sided, and then on the final side is the gate. But here's the trick. There's no real gate. There ain't no gate. How are you going to keep your sheep in if you ain't got no gate? You are going to lay down in front of that gate, and you're going to keep your sheep in there. So you literally lay down to protect your sheep. Get it? Ha ha. There's a reference here. Because I've said this to you before, I'll say it again. John loves imagery. John doesn't just come out and say anything. John is like, well, it's kind of like this. And he assumes you're kind of like this, Sometimes we don't know because it's been a few years since John's and our Things change, John. So people like me got to be up here being like, so this is what this looks like. Anyway, because it's a more dangerous time, so sometimes somebody might come and try and come over the gate and steal your sheep. And you're like, oh, no, you don't steal my sheep. This is like all I got. This is literally all I have in life is these sheep. You are not stealing sheep. So you might have to fight off the person to protect your sheep. Get it? Ha ha. Sometimes you're going to have to, with your little stick, you're going to have to fight off a wolf. That's unpleasant. Don't nobody want to fight off no wolf? Okay, so do we get the image that there are times when the shepherd will put the shepherd's self at risk for the sheep? Not all the time. Your goal is not to have to die for sheep. Nobody wants to die for sheep. I mean, we already established they're sheep. I mean, come on. Nobody wants to die for sheep. But you might have to put yourself at risk. But the more important role of the shepherd is to nurture, care for, love the sheep, and help them to grow and hopefully have more baby sheep so you have more money, because that's a good thing. Quick reference to sheep? Okay. We're all there? And yet sometimes you and I and we as Christians get really hung up on the fact that the shepherd dies. Like, this is all about it. And you're like, no. It's the fact that a life in which you nurture, love, and care for sheep may result in the cross. The cross is not the goal. The cross is the result of living a life in which you care for, love, nurture, and protect. Anyone get where I'm going here? All right. So, because sometimes I get tired, and I feel like all I do is I'm like, okay, quick, we got to make John actually make sense because his references don't always work, and that results in a whole lot of like studying history and actually remembering all the things I learned in seminary, and that's exhausting. So I think one of the most important things that we can do as preachers and we can do as Christians is to reframe or rethink some of our images so that they make sense to us today. Because, like I said, I think we sometimes get so hung up on superhero Jesus dying that we miss the actual superhero of Jesus, which is the life that Jesus lives and asks us to live in turn, that sometimes results in putting oneself at risk, even to the cross. Now, so we're going to do a little exercise, and I'll start it because, I'm willing to be vulnerable and weird. I mean, I already compared myself to an alpaca, so I think we've established I would like to be the alpaca of God's fold, or the llama, either one. So, in this image, I want us to think about an image in our culture today that makes sense to us that may parallel that important role. So the role of someone whose job is to nurture, protect, care for, sometimes really annoying things like sheep. And at times that may be something that ends up being dangerous. So for me, as I was pondering this, I thought kindergarten teacher. I know all the teachers are like, yup. Because y'all have met Wesley Grace. And there are days when I am like, oh my God, Wesley Grace. That I stop and I think, her teacher has 25 of her. And I think, my God bless that woman. Because I can't even imagine. So the role of the kindergarten teacher is what I ponder Christ being like for us. You have these like herd of crazy nut things, horrible. I mean, they're similar to cats, except they snot all over you. And my cat has never snot all over me. Those kindergartners, they do. And they're like, give me a hug. So you can get a snail track. This is why I work with middle schoolers. They don't snail track much anymore. They don't puke on you either. And then they're like, Or they come to you and they're like, the nurse. Hello. That is like on me. So I think of Jesus being like this because I think of us as the Christians being kind of like the kindergartners, right? I mean, because I'll only speak for myself. I'm not speaking for you. But I like to think of myself as being the kindergartner of the Christian world. If I can't be an alpaca, I'll be similar to a kindergartner, especially because I like naps and snacks. And yet, God cares for us anyway. God attempts to herd, nurture, and help grow those irritating little kindergartners that all of us are going, oh my God, can you imagine 25 of them? The kindergartner teacher does that with 25, like tons of them. And yet, the kindergartner's job is to nurture, protect, and help grow. And love them. God help them. They love those little things. All of them. All of them. And there are some, I work in a middle school, there are some that are hard to love. And you're like, all right, I love you. I don't like you right now, but God help me, I love you. And I think, oh my God, when they're 5, that's got to be so hard. So for me, that is an image that speaks to, if I were to modernize the Good Shepherd, I think kindergarten teacher. So I want us to think about it because that's going to speak to me because I have a kindergartner, and God help her, I love her. Don't always like everything she does, but God help me, I love her. And I work in a school, so I understand the amazing, incredible role of teachers because I couldn't do it. I work with 1 or 2 of them at a time, and it's sometimes amazing that I don't beat them. But I haven't yet, so don't go run and tell my principal, did you know she's hitting children? No, don't say that. I don't hit them. So that's an image that speaks to me. But I want us to think about that. So take a moment. What is an image that speaks to you of Christ being the Good Shepherd? And I know our temptation is to think of people who sacrifice their life. And there are times when teachers do. Isn't that horrible? It's horrible to think about the fact that they sometimes do that. But there are teachers who sacrifice money and even up to sacrificing their life to protect our children, but that is not their job. Does that make sense? It is true that their lives may result in them being put at risk, but their job is not risk. In the same way that the shepherd's job is not to risk the shepherd's life for the sheep. It may occur that the shepherd risks the shepherd's life or well-being for the sheep, but that is not the goal. So what is an image that speaks to you? Think about it. Anyone have any? That you're like, oh. Parent. Yeah, so the teachers in the school shootings. It's not their job as teachers, but they do it because they live a life that they sacrifice, love, care for, and nurture these children. And so sometimes, God help us, that happens. So the teachers, parents. Because no one's job as a parent, when you think, I'm going to be a parent, is I'm going to die for my kids. I'm going to put myself at risk for my children. But we all know in the back of our mind that that is a very real possibility. It's not our job. Our job as parents is to nurture, love, care for, and help them to grow into, hopefully, good citizens who grow out and change the world. Do you see this? Like, literally every finger of mine is crossed right now because they're 6 and turning 4. And I'm not so sure some days. But I'm trying. So what are some other images that you're like, okay, so we've got teachers, parents. What are some other policemen? Yeah, so their role is to protect. There are times when they have to take a risk to do that, but their role, we have an incredible SRO in my building, incredible, and he builds most amazing relationships with kids that, as I said before, there are some that are hard. They're really difficult. And yet, some of our police officers have an amazing gift about being able to make those connections. What are some others Yeah. Social workers. God help us. Yes. Social. Yes. And it's incredible. Some of our social workers put themselves at risk, but that's never their goal. Their goal is to help and to make a difference and to help people find the resources to thrive and sometimes even just to survive. But social workers are amazing. So I want us to think about these things. Think about those roles. Because that is what's going to help us make sense of Christ as the Good Shepherd. It's going to help us be like, oh, that is what I'm called to be like. In my most best moments, my most Christian moments, we are called to live a life that protects, that loves, enriches, supports other people. And there are times when we do that, when we really, truly do that, it may result in us being put at risk. But guys, the cross is never our goal. Ever. That's not the goal. Our goal is to make a world in which the cross is not necessary. That is our goal. With the full knowledge that when we do this, when we really, really, truly do this, when we live into this, the cross is a very real possibility. And if none of these images speak to you, God help you, you just listened to another bad sermon. Nailed it. You knew it was coming.
We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons. We can't wait to meet you.
We believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all that